So, marketing and promotion. Let's look at what it is, how it's done, and why it's important for you if you're involved in any project, campaign, or voluntary role. Why should you be interested in marketing and promotion? Well, the key reason is because promotion is directly linked to sustainability. And all that means is promotion and marketing is linked to your organisation or your group's likelihood of surviving into the future. You might do great work, but if no one knows about it, then no one's going to complain if you're threatened or fight to keep you around. You might provide a wonderful service, but if no one knows about it, no one's going to access it. You need to get word out about what you do. And for a lot of voluntary organisations, marketing and promotion is often left to the last minute. It's the last job on the list. After you've done everything else, oh, now we better tell people about it. We'll have to do a poster, I suppose. When promotion is so important to keeping that group or that campaign or that project alive, you really should be thinking about it earlier. So let's have a look at how you do that. What are you trying to achieve? There are a couple of basic mistakes people make when they start getting interested in marketing and promotion. The first thing is people confuse informing people with engaging with people. Informing is when you give people all the information, and obviously there's a point where you have to give people information, but more important at the beginning is that you engage with people, and that just means that you hook their interests, you get them curious about what you're doing, and often you get that interest by not giving them all the information. You raise questions in people's mind that they want answers to, then they want to find out more. If you look at most advertising you'll see on television, for instance, they don't tell you much about the products or the services, they just try and get you interested in it. What's that about? That's engaging with the audience. Don't get the two confused. The other thing that people get confused about is features and benefits. Features are all the things and the details about something. So, for instance, if you're doing a community fun day, a nice summer day full of activities, etc., the features would be all the activities that are going to be there, the parking facilities, the catering, everything that's going to be there. It's all the detail, if you like. The benefits is the so what. What difference does it make to the person going? So it might be that the benefit is, hey, do you want to keep the kids entertained for a couple of hours and it's free? That's a benefit. People are much more interested in the benefits than they are in the features. Don't fall into the trap of simply listing everything that's there. Really sell something, you have to tell them what difference it will make to them. What are the benefits? And that's important when we start pulling our advertising together, our marketing together, that we try and formulate that into what we call key messages. That's where you've looked at the benefits, you're trying to engage people's interest, and you distill it down to a phrase or a message. This is a great way for keeping your family entertained for a couple of hours, and it won't cost you a penny. That's a key message. Listing everything that's going on is just boring. The last thing you need to take into consideration when you're designing marketing is action. What that means is, what is it you want people to do in response to your marketing? Do you want them to phone a number? Do you want them to buy something? Do you want them to turn up to something? Do you want them to investigate something? Do you want them to simply be interested or be aware of you? You need to sit down and go, why are we doing this marketing? What do we want to try and achieve? How are you going to do your marketing? What we're talking about now is what we call the channels of marketing, the options that are available to you, and there are a lot, so I will simply pull out a few key points here. First of all, don't discount word of mouth. You know people, they know people, use it. It's a really good and cheap way of marketing anything. Secondly, a lot of people then fall onto what we call flyers and posters and leaflets. This is what we call broadcast advertising, and what that means is it works, but it only works if you do big numbers. If you literally throw out thousands of these things. You cannot just do 20 flyers and think that's going to do the trick. It needs big numbers because it's very inefficient. There'll be ratios, but if you put out 1,000 flyers, you might get one person turn up to something. So for it to work for you, you've got to do a lot, and that's not necessarily cheap. Okay, it's not the most cost-effective way of doing things. A more efficient way and a cheaper way of doing things is to be focused and targeted in your marketing. And the way you do that is you work out who is our target audience. What's the kind of person who would be interested in whatever it is we're marketing or promoting? What kind of person are they? What age are they? Where do they live? What are their interests? If you can really nail that down, then the next question is, how do we access those people? Where do you find them? What are they interested in? And you focus your marketing on those specific areas, so you're getting those specific people. That's often a much more cost effective, but you've got to put a bit more thought into it. Newspapers, print media, magazines, if you can get in those, great. If you're buying advertising, it can be expensive. You can sometimes haggle a deal if they're getting near their print deadlines. It's often much cheaper though if you can come up with a story. Newspapers love quirky, engaging, interesting stories. So if you know a celebrity or you can come up with an interesting angle on something, don't think just because you're doing something they'll want to report it. They want stories. They want interesting, quirky, different things. If you can come up with that, you can often get a lot of free advertising, and I've seen people do that where they're quite clever with it. Email's great. If you can set up email lists, you can create lists of people who literally are volunteering to be marketed to. Ask people if they're interested. Ask people if they want to add their names to a mailing list. Then you've got them. Okay, they can always ask. Take into account, please, GDPR and data protection. But you've got them on a list. You can then directly market to the people you know are interested in. That's the most focused marketing you can do. When you're designing any kind of marketing, take into account what we talked about in one of the previous videos, the picture superiority effect, which basically means that if I put up a picture and a word, most people will look to the picture before they look to the word. They'll find that has more impact for them. So try and use images as much as you can, because it will make your marketing a lot more interesting than just loads of text. Headlines are good. Headlines should not be about informing. A headline is about engaging. So you want your headline to have a hook. Often it's things that raise a question in the reader's mind, that they go, what's that about? Okay, don't give them all the information in the first couple of lines. Make them want to read more. Make them want to find out more. Again, keep your images very strong, and that kind of ties us to the last point I want to raise, which is the biggest change in marketing in the last 10 to 20 years has been social media. Social media is everywhere, it's free, and if you're good at it, it's a really effective way of marketing things. So you're looking primarily at things like Facebook is still the biggest player in social media, but Twitter probably comes second, and then there's a lot of others, which I won't go into. But they do take a bit of thought, and they do take a bit of work. You've got to constantly be putting things out there. So look into it. See if you've got anybody who's on social media, who knows social media in your group, and do a bit of investigation. It's a really powerful tool. Creating a marketing strategy. Well, that sounds complicated, doesn't it? But it's really just the things we've talked about already. So work out what you're trying to achieve, what your aim is. Work out who your target audience is. Are they older people, younger people, families, single people, whatever it is? Who are they? Then work out what your key messages are based on the benefits to that target group. What difference will what your thing make to them? The so what question. Then look at your channels. How am I going to market this? Consider then the scheduling or the timing. Professional marketing campaigns often have one type of advert at this point and then another type of advert at that point, and they build along up to a launch date or an event or a key time. They will build interest as over a period of time. This isn't a once only activity. You've got to do it, do it, do it, and do it. Okay, so think about the scheduling the time that you're going to take to do this. And then the last thing really is, how are you going to deal with the responses? If you're asking people to phone a number, is there going to be somebody to answer that phone call? If you're asking people to log onto a website, is the website set up for that? If you're asking people to buy something, is it there and ready to buy? If you're asking people to get tickets or turn up for something, is everything ready for the massive response you're going to get from your professional marketing strategy? Other things to consider. We've covered the meat of this really, but there are a few other points that you need to be aware of. Firstly, permissions. If you're going to use someone's photograph, it's a good idea that you have their permission to use that photograph, preferably in writing. And that also goes for things like video, music and text. Any kind of material, if somebody else has created it originally, there are copyright laws to be observed, and you have to make sure that you've got permission to use it. If not, it can be a very expensive mistake. Imagine you spend thousands having glossy leaflets printed, only for the person whose photograph is on the cover to say, "I never gave you permission to use my photo," and then all of those leaflets have to go in the shredder. Very expensive. I've seen it happen actually, and it cost thousands. So please, if you're going to use anything that was originated by somebody else or has somebody else's face on it, just make sure you've got permission to do so before you start spending the cash, okay? If you're going to work, as we often do in voluntary organisations, with other organisations, they may have their own rules and protocols about marketing and promotion that you need to follow along with, so be aware of those. Especially around things like logos and images like that. Logos are important for certain groups, so they'll have rules about where their logo is on the leaflets and flyers and websites and how big it is in relation to other logos. This especially applies if you're working with government agencies where they've got those logos with like the crown on it, etc. There are literally laws around that stuff. They've got to be higher than everybody else's. So just find out what those rules are, because you don't want to make an expensive mistake. Think about timing, scheduling, etc. Again, timing is one of those things, as we mentioned earlier, often gets left, the marketing gets left to the end. It's very hard to do right as the last minute, when really you should be thinking about it before you do anything, especially if you're going to market on social media, because all the things you're doing to prepare whatever it is you're doing is great material if you can get photos and videos, etc., for the social media feed to build interest, to build anticipation before whatever it is you do happens. And the last thing really I wanted to mention was just how you design things, the language you use. Just think about the words you use. Are they accessible? Are they informative? Are they engaging for people? Do they generate interest? And the last thing you want to do is offend anyone or upset anyone with the type of language that you're using. So if you've got any doubts about that, just get a second opinion. Ask somebody, this is what we're thinking of doing, this is our design. What do you think? Would you think we'd have any problems with that? So there's a few things there to take into account before you start spending any money. So there you have it, marketing and promotion for community groups. There's obviously a massive subject and there's a lot more to it than what we've had the time to squeeze into this short video, but we've covered why it's important for the long-term sustainability of groups, the different channels that are available to you, some key points around that, putting together a marketing strategy and some other extra little technical issues and points you need to be aware of, like permissions, copyright, logos, etc. I hope that has been of use to you. Until next time, take care and goodbye.